Hey everyone, it's Carissa Wiley at sprinkledwithglitter.com. Thanks for joining me today. Today I am sharing a card that features repeated die cut patterns. Now this is perfect for those small little die cuts that you may have. I'm going to teach you how to make some pattern paper, and I'm using the Framed Art Stamp and coordinating die set. This is brand new from the Kindness and Bloom release from Pinkfresh Studio. It's available now, and if you caught my video yesterday, I used these products to create a card and shared some ways to step up your stenciling game. So if you haven't checked that out, be sure you check it out. Now this stamp set features some really adorable images, but of course the oranges caught my eye because I grew up in the middle of a bunch of orange trees in the middle of Central California, and my family was orange farmers. So I really love anything oranges, and so we're gonna create with that today. I'm starting with my orange stamp, and I'm stamping this several times onto some white cardstock using the Misty Coast ink. This will kind of give me a no line coloring effect in the end. It won't be completely no line, but it kind of helps that outline to kind of fade into the background and allow the images to really shine through. Now, if you caught yesterday's video, you saw me do this stenciling. I'm going to work through this again just so that you can see all of the stenciling. I'm kind of working one stencil at a time and stenciling all of the images with that one stencil, and then I'll move to the next stencil. So I'm blending the entire orange area with Peach Fuzz ink from Pinkfresh Studio and adding a little bit of shading at the bottom using some Sunkissed ink. And that little masking on the top is masking off the little blossom area on the branch of the orange. So I'm just keeping that masked off, and then I'll go back and blend all of those floral images at once. Now, once I've worked through the first stencil, I'm going to move on to the second stencil, which is the greenery. And for this, I am using some Eucalyptus ink from Pinkfresh Studio. Once again, I'm just doing all of my stenciling with stencil number 2 before I move on to the third stencil. So you can see I have 8 images that I'm working on here, and this actually goes pretty quickly. These are really small images, and that really makes them perfect for the technique that we're going to do today. Now, if you wanted to, you could kind of stamp out your pattern ahead of time instead of using die cuts, but by stamping, stenciling, and die cutting these images, it allows me to add some dimension to my pattern, which I really like. Now I'm coming in with an orange marker to kind of add a little more shading between the 2 layers of oranges before I die cut them. They just felt like they were kind of running into each other, so I needed that little bit of shading to kind of set the 2 pieces off from each other. Now I'm working through and die cutting all of my images, and then before I move on to build my pattern, I'm using an A2 layers die to die cut this piece of Blush Luxe cardstock. This is going to serve as my card front and the background for the pattern that I'm building up. Now, as I mentioned before, you could create this with just the stamp, but by die cutting this, it allows me to kind of create some dimension in this pattern as well. So I'm just kind of laying these out on my card front and seeing what arrangement I like. I'm going to play with some of the placing, but what I want to do is I want to allow some of the images to hang off the edge, to kind of bleed off the edge, just like they would in pattern paper. And I want to make sure that I have one image, and that's kind of that image in the lower right corner that is a full image. So that's going to kind of be my focal area. And then I'm going to build my pattern around it. Now, once I have all of these images where I like them, I am going to very carefully pick them up, and one by one, I'm going to add a little bit of tape runner adhesive to the back of each of these images just to keep them in place temporarily. Now, I'm not trying to adhere these permanently. I'm just trying to adhere them temporarily to my card front so that I can trim off the excess. And I like to do this with just some regular tape runner adhesive. This is not repositionable adhesive. I need it to stay in place well enough that I can trim these without them getting squirrely on me, but I also need to be able to remove them. So I'm just putting like a little dot of that tape runner adhesive and adhering them right back into the place that I had them. Now keep in mind, most of these are hanging off the card front, and I've done this on purpose because if you've ever looked at pattern paper, you will have some bleed off the edge. The pattern doesn't go perfectly and stop at the edge. So that's what I'm creating here, but this time I'm doing it with die cuts. I'm trimming off the excess with a pair of scissors that's kind of a long blade, and those little pieces, I'm actually going to use them to tuck into various areas to fill out my pattern. Now, once I have the edges trimmed off, I'm going to remove these one by one again, add some foam adhesive to the back, and then realign them where they were. By having those blunt cut edges, it really helps guide me where to place these onto the card front because it will line up directly with the card front and kind of sit flush with that card front. And that really does help in repositioning these. So you can see that flat area on the orange, it's going to line up with that left edge and it fits in there perfectly. Now, if you need a little wiggle room, you can add some liquid glue to the back side of your foam adhesive to allow you to kind of wiggle it into place. But this seems to be working pretty well for me, and I love the extra dimension that I'm getting by picking those up and adding that foam adhesive behind it. So here's my focal image. It remains intact. I'm adding that on there with a little bit of foam adhesive, and then you can see the little pieces that I've trimmed off. I'm actually nestling those right into the pattern that I've created. I did have to trim down some little tiny pieces of foam adhesive to make them work, but I think it was worth it in the end. And overall, I love this card. I love this technique. I think it's so much fun. This is something that you can do with small stamped images, small die cut images, or even sentiments. I've done it with sentiments before, and it's a lot of fun to create a background with repeated sentiments. Speaking of sentiments, I have a hot foiled sentiment that I created using the Here For You press plate set. This was part of last month's Pinkfresh Studio release. I'm not over it yet. This says just saying hello. So I have foiled it in some gold or champagne foil. And then I stacked up a couple layers of plain white die cuts behind it. And I'm going to kind of nestle this right into the pattern that I've created. So I have some foam adhesive where it's going to touch the card front. And I added a little bit of liquid glue where it's going to overlap the oranges that I have in place. I'm going to take this entire card front and nestle it onto a layer of antique ivory cardstock. I did use some foam adhesive for that. And this entire thing will get mounted on an A2 top folding card base made from some white cardstock. So there's this beautiful light contrast between the cream and the white card base. And this card, it really does just make my heart sing with that peachy background, the oranges, and of course that foiled sentiment. I'm going to finish the card off with a few of the metallic gold pearls from Pinkfresh Studio. I'm using some liquid glue and my dual tipped embellishment tool to get them into place on my card front. And I did add one on top of this little focal image of the oranges there that kind of stayed intact. I thought that was a fun way to kind of set them off. Now I came in with one little tiny trimmed piece to kind of finish off my pattern. It felt a little empty there, so I just placed that onto the card front using some foam adhesive. And that finishes off my card today featuring repeated die cut patterns. I absolutely love this card. It has my heart for so many reasons. I hope I've inspired you to try something new in your card making. And don't forget to tag me when you share on social media. I love to see what you all are making. Now, as always, I will have links to the featured products used in this project in the description at YouTube. So if you're looking for something in particular, be sure you check there, or you can head on over to my blog at sprinkledwithglitter.com. I'll have that linked below as well. Over there, you'll find more still shots, more information, and a complete list of supplies. Be sure to join me on Instagram today. This project is a part of an Instagram hop celebrating the new Kindness in Bloom release from Pinkfresh Studio, and there are prizes to be had. As always, thanks so much for stopping by and watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you enjoyed this project. If you did, be sure to give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications here on YouTube. Thanks again for watching. I'm so glad you're here, and until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day.